This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. I've written 5 books, and I'm saying this not to impress anybody at all. I mean, you talk about a labor of love. But books are fascinating to me. I am a voracious reader. I've got a library behind me. I've got books in boxes. I learned to read. Now, this is a true story. My dad was he was a serial entrepreneur, and one of the businesses he started, this is when I was born, was a grocery store in Roseburg, Oregon, of all places. And he did custom cutting, and I mean, Dad was kind of crazy. He started about 18 businesses, I think. But the grocery store, it was a country store sort of a deal, and it had a magazine rack. And every Wednesday, he would go down to the vendor and pick up magazines for the rack. My very first job when I was about 4 or 5 years old, was to stock the comics in that magazine rack. And this is back I'm going to date myself here, but this was back in the 1950s. And so I got one of each of the comics. And that's how I learned to read. First of all, it was the pictures, but then I would sit down with my mom, and she would actually work with me to understand the story that was in the comic book. Now, I wish I could go back in time and get those comics again, because I think I had the first Marvel comics, the first Superman. I mean, all that stuff, worth a fortune today. But reading has always been my gateway into different worlds. And as a 5-year-old, reading, you just imagine the imagination. I could see myself, in these books, in these comics. It wasn't books at that time, but in these comics. And then you fast forward, by the time I was out of grade school, I had read War and Peace. And I just grabbed some big books. And I was just fascinating with the stories and the worlds that would open up with books. And that's served me very well in my life. I'm very eclectic in terms of what I actually will put on my desk. I've got 3 books open on the desk right now. But quantum physics, autobiographies, just business books. I've got a book of poetry open right now. Just all kinds of different things. And I'm mentioning all of this because books, Stoic philosophy, and I'm a little scatological in this right now, but I believe it was Cicero that said I'll just use Cicero as a placeholder right now, but he said, if you want to really know something, you need to learn to speak to the dead. And what he was talking about was read the books. Don't just peruse them, but sit down and have a conversation with those authors that have passed, that have got incredible wisdom, because they will open up the soul of life to you. They'll open up a window that you have never experienced existing before until you stepped into that book. So my guest today, Everett O'Keefe, is an exemplar in the publishing world. And I use that word very specifically here. He's an example of what it means to curate. He's an example of what it means to actually select in a way that allows for authors to get their voice out there and actually have the message that they're intending and having the world that they're intending be communicated. He's the founder of Book Publisher Network. And I paused here for a minute because there's a number of things that he's actually founded. But the Book Publisher Network is a group of publishers, publishing consultants, book coaches, and other book professionals. And he works with mastermind groups, with authors, with publishers, hybrid kinds of, the hybrid piece is very interesting as well. But he's actually shepherded more than 200 best-selling books into the marketplace. And these are best-selling books with at least 200 different authors. So, off of the hat here, I'm excited to have you on the show. Everett,
Thank you
welcome.
so much, Blaine. I tell you, what a great introduction, because you just said something so interesting that we didn't talk about for us to discuss. You talked about, about being able to get in the minds and interview these authors that are deceased and stuff like that. The day that we get to do that, actually have a verbal discussion with those authors, is here. There are new formats coming out, um, uh, perhaps as quick as this August, that will allow you to do exactly that. So it's interesting that you brought that up. We didn't prepare in advance for that at all, but
Yeah.
the
Say
world is
more about that. I'm intrigued. Is it a holographic sort of a?
No. There's a new format on the horizon. We've gone through paper books, we've had audio books, we have ebooks, and the next book is an AI book. And the developer of this product is launching in August. And imagine this, that you buy, let's say, the ebook version, you buy some electronic version of the book, and on the fly, you can read it in multiple languages. You can on the fly have it read the book to you in multiple languages, and then turn around and have a discussion with the book. You can literally say, hey, give me the breakdown on chapter 5 and the key points, and it's going to do that. And then you can say, hey, you know what, I need to study this for my whatever class. Can you create flashcards for me for chapter 8? And can you create and I see a contradiction here between what he says in chapter 3 and chapter 9. Can you walk me through that? And all of this, and with the book just talking right back to you in real time and having a conversation, there's so much coming. And we started off, you started off with talking about how amazing books are. They're just about to get even more amazing.
That I'm fascinated. I am absolutely. I can't wait. August, huh? Oh, right around
That's
there.
right. Now the question is the company founding it has created some big things in the past. The question is, how big a splash will they make? Will it get, will it hit? I'm trying to figure the phrase, but is it going to get the density and the exposure enough that it gets that groundswell to be the thing?
Yeah.
Or will we have another Betamax VHS battle?
I hope not. yeah. We need to get that critical mass piece here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Critical mass. I don't know why that phrase was escaping me.
Hey, I'm a trained professional here.
There you go. That's it. Thank you. I'm in good hands.
There we go. Both of us here. Yeah. So, this talks to the power of publishing. And when I say publishing, most people in my experience think about literally a hard copy sort of a thing. That's the typical thing. But yeah, I finished a book just the other day called Swerve, which is a fascinating read on how, I don't even know how to start this one. You go all the way, the library in Alexandria. Yeah. Go back to 300-400 BC, and there was the Library of Alexandria, had all of, literally, quote unquote, all of the assembled knowledge of humankind at that point in time was purported to have been in the Library at Alexandria. The library got burned. But what's interesting here is atoms were being discussed as a fundamental building block of reality back at that point in time. Yeah. And in Epicurean, philosophy is steeped not in food, but in a conversation around the atomic nature of reality. Now, the church got a hold of that information, didn't particularly like it, so it got quashed. And a lot of that information, obviously the library was burned, but those sorts of tidbits, those little quanta of knowledge got scattered and forgotten about. And the book Swerve was literally about a search that the papal secretary in 1400 went on a search for old manuscripts that were purported to have come out of the Alexandria library. And he found a poem that was a description of Epicurean philosophy, that there was like only about 5 copies left existing in the entire world. He found it in an old monastery in Germany, and he copied it, and they started distributing it because it was all written by hand at that point in time. The printing press, Gutenberg hadn't come along at that point in time. And it caused a shift in trajectory in humankind, literally in the human experience. The whole Reformation came out of that. So where I'm going with this, Everett, is the power of ideas that are captured in form, whether it's audio, today, or visual or holographic or whatever it is. But the power of ideas to actually change the trajectory of the human experience of life as it's lived on this planet. You've brought 200 books into the marketplace, best-selling books. And I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Is there any one of those that you think has actually caused a significant shift in trajectory from an ideation perspective? It was enough of a disruption that people went, whoa. And I'm thinking of something like Daniel Pink's work, or that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because there are, the truth is that there are as many ideas as there are people, right?
About 8 billion of us.
Yeah, and they each have a place. They each have a role. I'll tell you one of the books that I am happiest about. An author named Roseanne Forte created a book that is a different. And sometimes the granular is as important as the giant ideas, but it's just a different way to look at addiction. And that book, in fact, she just came out with a second. She's about to come out with a third. Is changing the way significant portions of people are looking at addiction. And if we understand the damage of addiction and the commonality of addiction, that's critical. And you and I had a conversation about Jim Collins, a reference to Jim Collins' Good to Great earlier, and those are big ideas that impact a lot of people on the business side. How many lives will be impacted by combating addiction? Like, think of the intergeneration, multi-generational impact. And Roseanne's doing a fantastic job with her book and promoting her book everywhere. I don't get credit for it. She's done the hard work. But and there is nothing like a book. There is no other tool that I can think of that can convey so much over such a great period of time and then endure. Endure. You have mentioned a number of what people would call ancient manuscripts, basically, at this point, and think about those have lived more than 2,000 years at this point. And nothing's changed. It is still the book. It is still the book. It may get delivered by audio. It may get delivered by ebook or AI or whatever, but we still have it. And you also just reinforced something for me, that you may have heard archaeologists talk about how this time we're in is going to be an archaeological wasteland, when 1,000 years from now, they're not going to be able to find pictures of people or the things they wrote or the things they created, because they were done digitally and then just got lost in the midst of time. Maybe that's another reason that we need to always still be doing paper books in addition to the ebooks, that they may last. So we still have them. So we don't have the Library of Alexandria burned down. By the way, another great book that you just made me think of is there's a great book about how the Irish saved the world. And it wasn't
Okay.
through the creation of Irish whiskey. Um,
Oh, come on.
yeah, but it was about that time in the Dark Ages when the monasteries of Ireland were some of the very few repositories of the wisdom of the ancient world. And
Uh,
so you just made me think, it just brought that to
Interesting.
my mind. Boy, we're having
Yeah.
all sorts of fun going all over here, Blaine. This is great.
Yeah. But I think that's the thread here that I think is fascinating to explore. Just to your point about artifacts, uh, we our history defines us in many ways, and if we're not cognizant of history, the old adage is we're doomed to repeat it, that sort of a thing. And in a disposable economy, which there's strong argument can be made that this is a disposable economy. We're going to toss stuff away. We don't know where away is, but that's where it's going to go. So what artifacts do we have left here? And where I mean, this is going to seem kind of like a weird segue here, but when I read a book that captures me, there's beauty that's being expressed in the book. And I'm not talking necessarily aesthetic beauty as much as a felt resonance. Yeah. And I mean, just I remember when I first read one of the best books one of the most meaningful books I've ever read. I'm asked all the time, what's your reading list? At the top of my reading list is a book called Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. And it absolutely rocked my world as I was about 18 at that time, I think. Just the possibilities that it opened up. Science fiction is a genre that I absolutely love because it's
Likewise.
all about possibility. And so when I'm talking about beauty, what I'm talking about in part, and this is something that Thomas Troward, Scottish philosopher, said, beauty is the apprehension of the soul or the spirit of something. When you can actually apprehend the spirit that created the sunset, it's beautiful. Or a piece of art, the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is beautiful because Da Vinci captured the spirit of his model. There was just something there, and part of that had to do with what he brought to the painting as well. With books, it's the same thing. So, as a conveyor of spirit, a conveyor of the soul of humanity, I'd be very interested in your take as a publisher on how that gets captured, how that gets transmuted into written form or into a digestible form, and how it's sustained. Now, I know that's that's a big hairball.
Wow. No, that's I've never been asked that question before. I can promise you. Um, I think it goes to the mystique and the unique position of books in both in how we as a society think. Like, for instance, there's a certain sacred nature of books. You don't you dare burn a book, right?
Right.
There's all of that, which nobody would say about a videotape or a flyer or a promotional gizmo or whatever, right? We would just never would say anything like that. But books,
Burn a book.
um,
Yeah.
but also I think it's because so books are one of the few. Well, okay, so think of the example of the French Impressionist artists, and particularly pointillism. And I'm sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
mispronouncing it, right? Okay.
No, you're spot on. Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at those paintings, they're just blotches. They are just dots of different colors of paint. But when we look at them, our eye fills in the blanks.
Yeah.
And they become these vivid images, and we're stunned by how realistic the lighting is with the light flowing through the trees or whatever it is. And that's because our mind is co-creating with the artist.
Yeah.
And I feel that books are the same way. It's that it's a medium where, unlike video, we get to co-create with the author. We read the author's words. Our mind fills in the blanks and fleshes it out. It's the same reason that most people love the book better than the movie.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
I know, well, that character doesn't look at all like I imagined, or that scene doesn't look like I imagined, or whatever. And And that's something so unique about books. So when we as an author write a book and put our soul or our philosophy, our beliefs and ideas into the book, suddenly the reader is actually going to make it better. The reader's going to improve it by creating along with us as they read. It is also, by the way, the reason that books are so persuasive, because the reader is co-creating. And as you know, people support what they create. And so we find ourselves creating with the author and then reinforcing in our own mind that which the author told us. And that's why I think it's so powerful to convey big ideas. I also think that's why it's so powerful as a tool for a business to build out their brand and expand their message.
Right before we started recording, you had mentioned something to me that I wanted to be sure we didn't lose, which is a comment that you made about a business leader writing a book is a way that the business leader can actually convey the soul or the spirit of the business.
Yes, and that is,
can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you as the executive of a business or someone high up in a business decide that you want to write a book, and you may have all sorts of different purposes. There's so many great outcomes, like I could list about 20 of them that come from writing a book. But your podcast is about the soul of business, and if you put into that book your soul, your philosophy of business, you can't come up with a better way to create or to imbue that or to transfer that in to your prospect of your business, to the customer of your business, but also to the employees of your business. They may think they understand the philosophy of the business. Maybe they've read a mission statement. Maybe they've heard you say that mission statement 4 million times. But until they live with you a little while in a book, and you do get to live with the author in a book.
Yeah.
So, then until you do, then you may not fully understand it. It's one of the great things when I have a new employee join us, they absolutely read my book, The Power of the Published. It is one of the most concise and effective ways I can convey to them the philosophy of our business, why we do it, and why our clients engage with us. So it's powerful. And then, of course, also you're talking about legacy. This is something that will outlive you, and you can pass that along. I'm within 2 or 3 weeks of becoming a grandfather for the first time.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm super excited. In fact, I was literally at my daughter's house 15 minutes before I came to the office to get on the podcast. But I'm thinking how exciting it will be that my grandchild or great grandchild can get to know their grandpa Everett, a little bit through the books that I've published.
Yeah.
So many great things.
Oh, that is, and being a grandfather, that is a gift. I've got 4 grandchildren, and
congratulations!
It's extraordinary, and the oldest one is 21 this year, which is frightening. It's kind of like, how in the hell did that happen?
But that's fantastic. You really get to know your grandchild as an adult.
Yeah, that's the phases of life.
That's a rare privilege.
Yeah, it really is. The idea of the grandchild getting to know the grandparent through the books that he or she has written. I think I mentioned, I've written 5 books, and I'm not sure that the grandkids have read them. I know that they're aware of them.
They're not going to until they're in their 40s or 50s and thinking about their own mortality, starting to get into that journey. Right? I don't know about you. I was never interested in the genealogy of my family until the last 5 years or so. And then I start to become a little bit more interested about the things as I get older.
I was keynoting an IPO summit at NASDAQ headquarters last month. And I was on the stage with Napoleon Hill's grandson.
Wow.
And he's a great guy. But we were talking about, Napoleon, hit Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And I said, well, when did you first read it? And he just kind of hung his head a little bit and said, well, Granddad gave it to me when I was 16. I didn't read it. I put it down. It was kind of like, well, big deal. He looked at it and said, yeah, I'm not going to read this thing. Fast forward, he retired as a major out of the Army, began another career when he was in his late 40s as an MD. He went back to school and became a doctor. But the genesis of that had to do with he picked the book back up when he was in his mid to late 20s, and it absolutely transformed his life. I mean, he went, "Oh my God!" And then he went back and reread it again in his late 30s, which is when he decided to retire. But to the point, it's not going to get read today. But the legacy, the messaging, and this is it lives on. It can live on.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's one of the many reasons that I mean, I think any business leader should have a book, and whether that's to convey their philosophy and legacy, or whether that is to bring in new prospects and clients to the organization, or to gain access to speaking on stages. Blaine, you're speaking. You were speaking on a stage, and you probably have encountered this before. If you're ever talking to an event organizer about speaking for something, and they're like, "Okay, great. What's the name of your book?"
Yeah,
it's one of the first questions, right?
It is.
And fortunately, you can say, "Well, which one?" Right? That's the best answer to that question. Which one?
Yeah.
But people who want to build their businesses through speaking, it's critical. It's a minimum required equipment.
Yeah, and it's a calling card, basically, is what it becomes. Now, fortunately, I've this Compassionate Capitalism was a bestseller internationally, which was great news.
Fantastic, Blaine.
Yeah, we got some good traction with it. The idea of writing a book, though, is can be daunting. I mean, I remember when I wrote my first one. Who wants to read this? It's kind of like, why? Yeah, it's already been done. That's been said. Yeah. And it took me, literally, I think it took me about 3 years plus to write that book. I keep looking at my desk going, I've got to get to that. It was painful. Where I'm going with this is a question about your services. You mentioned that every business leader actually needs to have at some point in their career a book that illustrates who they are, what they're up to, and why they matter. Do you work with clients to help them in the shepherding process to, from ideation all the way through to here's a hard copy?
Yeah. And the answer is it depends upon what their goal is with the book. Or if someone, and everyone's got their own way they want to go about a book, right? Some people want to use it as an excuse to sequester themselves for 6 months on Walden Pond, right? But that's not required. And for most people, that's not workable anyway. I'm a big fan of a rapidly written book. And the reason I say that is because the rapidly written book gets published. The slowly written book rarely gets finished.
Yes.
And you've written 5 books. You understand the journey. So if a client comes to us and they're interested in getting a book into the market and they want to follow one of our kind of rapid writing strategies, then we will work with them through the content. If they want to write it in a more traditional, organic fashion, then which is completely great as well. It's terrific. I will typically connect them with either a book coach or, if appropriate, a ghostwriter to help them. Because the reality of it is like I've heard statistics that say that 90% of people want to write a book. I don't know if that's true, but an extremely high percentage of people do, right? But for a lot of people, this may sound weird. They want to be authors more than they want to be writers.
Yes.
Right? They want to have. They want the benefits of authorship. They want to have the authority that comes with writing the book. They want the leverage, the impact of what they could do with a book in their business or brand. But nobody said they had to be amazing writers to do that. And So there's always a balance. Everyone's got their own method and bend, but regardless, if when someone has a conversation with us, we have a path forward
Okay.
for them. And then something that we do, I think it's not common, is when we publish a book, we set everything up where our client owns everything, rather than in traditional publishing where the author owns almost nothing.
Right.
So, so traditional publishing, as you understand, can take years to see a book come to market, which in the business world is an eternity.
Oh, it's not
right?
tenable.
And then you're selling your content to the publisher. They own your IP. You're limited in how you can use it. We go the other way around. Our clients own everything. We set up an accounts they own. They get their books at cost. They have complete freedom as how to use those. All royalties flow to them. We simply take a fee for our service. And as a result, we find a lot of people coming from traditional publishing to us, where they're like, okay, my next book, I want to do it where I own and control it. And as you can imagine, Blaine, it's an honor from our standpoint to help bring these people's messages and the soul that they bring out to the world. Like that's something I never imagined I would be part of. So it is an honor for sure.
Everett, where can people find out more about Ignite Press, about what you're doing, about and you've got I think you've got an offer here for folks. I want to be sure we get that in.
Absolutely. If people want to get a copy of my book, The Power of the Published, How Rapidly Authoring a Book Can Ignite Your Business and Your Life, they can get that. I set up a link for you. It's at mypodcastperk.com.
My podcast perks.
Perk. Just single. Mypodcastperk.com, and you can get a free digital version of the book.
We'll have that in the show notes.
Speaking of digital, in our conversation, and then if anyone wants to sit down with me and talk about their book and what, even if they just have a rough idea, or maybe they have a complete manuscript, or maybe they've already even published, happy to have that conversation. And people can find me at ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us, and happy to have a conversation.
Great. Folks, I've been talking with, and it's been a fascinating conversation. I've loved this. Everett O'Keefe, founder of Ignite Press, the founder of the Book Publisher Network. Everett, thank you so much for just being a great conversational guest. I've loved this.
Hey, Blaine, thank you for taking us in directions I never thought we'd have a conversation on today. That's so great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being such a good sport and following along. Let's go look over here. Ooh, squirrel.
Love it.
Okay. Folks, been listening to the Soul of Business podcast. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. As always, my admonition to you at the end of the day is go out in the world and find a way to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. Nature works through distribution. It doesn't work through accumulation. There's a reciprocity involved. You got to start with distribution. Go out and be a part of nature. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.